Excellent. Okay. Well, hello everybody. I am here to talk to you about Creative Commons. Who here has heard of it? I suppose he mentioned it last week in class, so you've all heard of it, hopefully. He just gave you a clue at least that you should have heard of it. Who here actually is familiar with it and feels like they have an idea what it is? Nobody, haha. It's very exciting. So Creative Commons is, of course, a copyright licensing system. That's pretty much all it is. It isn't, sort of some kind of great revolutionary thing. All it is a set of licenses that people put on their material. But the great thing about this is that it vastly changes the way that you can use stuff in the internet environment legally. Now, I understand that you guys have already talked a fair amount about, well, you talked last week about copyright, so I'm going to not go into too much detail. I'm going to assume that you guys know the basics of copyright and, what it means and the problems it might cause for you as a media teacher. And I'm just going to kind of go through straight into that kind of stuff. Now, thanks to Hollywood, everybody pretty much, a lot more people anyway, know about copyright nowadays than they used to. Once upon a time, none of us, when we were growing up and going to school and stuff, we didn't know what copyright was, we didn't care, and we didn't have to worry about it. We would make, remix tapes for our friends, and we would, sort of make a school project that cut things together and put them all together, and all those kind of things. And we never had to think about the copyright consequences of these kind of activities. Unfortunately, nowadays, the great thing about digital technologies is that it lets people do these kind of things that we've always done a lot better, a lot more efficiently, and to share it with a lot more people. So all of a sudden, people are doing the same kind of things that they've always done in their lounge rooms, like making mixtapes and stuff, and sharing them with 1 billion of their best friends. So things that have always been going on are suddenly happening in the public eye. And this is where you start hitting up against copyright law, basically. Copyright law has always technically made these things illegal, most of them anyway. Certainly making a mixtape for your girlfriend illegal. That's, an unauthorised reproduction of a copyright work, in fact, a whole pile of copyright works, and therefore, you are infringing the person's copyright. You shouldn't be doing it without their permission. It's nice and simple and straightforward. But it didn't really matter because it was taking place in a private space and stuff. You knew you weren't going to be sued. Nobody even noticed, and nobody would have probably thought of suing you. But now, of course, people who are, sort of sharing music with their friends are genuinely being sued. The record people, I think the last figures they released was that they'd sued about 6,000 people around the world in the UK and US. Nobody in Australia yet. The Australia group is trying to avoid suing anybody. But yeah, about 6,000 people have been, issued with notices of, suit. They have all, almost all of them have actually settled, and so they've never gone to court. But one that did go to court in the US, a woman was, I think it was $200,000 she was ordered to pay based on 20 songs that were on her computer. So the consequences of not knowing about copyright have suddenly, exploded hugely thanks to the internet. And the chances that you're going to be infringing copyright have also exploded hugely because, in the olden days, copyright law is based on an era where you had a book and you could still open that book. No matter what copyright law said, you could always open that book and read it. You could always pass it on to your friend and that kind of thing. But in the digital era, even opening something on a screen creates a copy of it. And so you need permission to do that. Literally, watching a DVD is illegal if it's a pirated DVD in Australia because you're making an unauthorised copy in the memory of your DVD player. It's not even a copy of the whole film, it's just a little bit of the film, but it's in there. And therefore, you're infringing copyright law. So digital technologies basically mean that anything you do in a digital environment, anything emailing, posting onto blogs, making videos, cutting and pasting, all those kind of things, are pretty much going to involve copyright uses. And so unless you've got permission to do it, you're going to be infringing, potentially, unless you've got permission or an exception. And this, of course, creates huge problems for everybody. Now, the general response that you'll get from most people is, well, who cares about that? Why even worry about this? Like, nobody's going to sue me really for doing these kind of things. And if it's such bad law, then I'm just going to ignore it. I mean, we have all been ignoring the fact that it has been illegal to record TV shows for ever since the video player was invented until last year. It's still illegal to record them if you're going to lend them to your neighbour. So be careful. But yeah, so we've all basically been ignoring copyright law a lot, and a lot of people, you know, still that's their response. And that's going to be most of your kids in your classroom's response, obviously, they're going to say, I want to put this Britney Spears song in my video, what does it matter? And they're right, it doesn't matter a lot of the time. You guys are going to be really lucky. You're in the most privileged copyright group, I'd actually say, in the world, and particularly in Australia. Teachers, because you have a lot of really good exceptions and a lot of really good stuff that help you, that give you permission to use things legally. Most particularly, you've got anything that happens like classroom use, the kids actually doing their own assignments, that's always going to be illegal as long as it's in the classroom. You know, if they want to make a video for you guys and put a Britney Spears song behind it and hand it to you, completely fine, completely legitimate, doesn't matter. The moment you guys want to put that video up onto your school website, however, you've gone beyond the what you have, the exception that you have. Or the moment that you want to, say, put it into a competition. This is a big thing that's starting to, you know, more and more multimedia teachers are trying to get their kids' stuff out there. The kids want to put their stuff up onto YouTube. Like, you know, what's the point of getting a kid to make a really cool video unless they share it with people, because this is what kids want to do. But the moment that that starts happening, you do basically go beyond the scope of the exceptions that let you guys use copyright fairly freely within the classroom. And more importantly, you guys can't afford to just ignore copyright in those circumstances. If it's a competition on the school website, you know, or if there's going to be any kind of link to the school, you know, on YouTube and stuff, then there is genuine potential that the school will be sued. Like, that's the problem. You guys are in the most privileged group, but at the same time you also are in a group that can't afford to just, you know, take a risk management approach, which is what most of us do. Most of us say, I don't think anybody's going to sue us here, so I'll put it up anyway, and that kind of thing. But you guys normally, because of policy, school policies and things like that, and just because of the realities, have to be quite careful. I mean, the group that they're suing the most are universities. Universities in the US are just, you know, and in Australia, universities have been sued as well. That's one group that has actually been sued for infringing material put by their students onto the uni's servers. So you guys are going to have to actually try to obey copyright law, unfortunately for you. And your students aren't going to want to, because all this stuff, all the information that normally you get about copyright is all about how you can't use, what you can't do. It's all about, you know, don't pirate things, don't email it to your friends, don't download music, blah, 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 blah. And so your kids are going to want to just, you know, ignore copyright because they're like, well, it's all about stopping us from doing things, which is where Creative Commons comes in. Oh, sorry, I didn't go into much detail, sorry, about your exceptions. I should have moved on to that slide. But just so you know, your classroom use is normally okay, kids doing their assignments okay, and you doing photocopying, motocopies, that's okay. You guys have exceptions for that. But the moment you do anything that kind of goes beyond those kind of things, then you start to get into trouble.